My name is Jessica Chen, and this is the story of how a CEO's 5-minute dismissal of my life's work became the foundation of my $50 million fortune and the catalyst for his company's spectacular downfall. It was March 2019 when I first conceived what would become Vertex. I was a senior systems architect at Global Tech Systems, a mid-tier enterprise software company in Chicago that specialized in predictable, incremental improvements to existing business solutions. The kind of company where innovation went to die a slow, bureaucratic death. I had been working there for 2 years, watching as our competitors gradually gained market share while we continued selling the same repackaged solutions we'd offered since 2015. Our clients were constantly asking for more integrated, intelligent systems, but Global Tech's response was always the same. Let's focus on proven solutions that generate predictable results. That phrase became the unofficial company motto, whispered in meetings whenever someone suggested anything remotely innovative. It was also CEO Robert Kane's favorite way to shut down any discussion that might involve what he called unnecessary risk. Robert was a textbook example of corporate risk aversion taken to pathological extremes. At 58, he had built his entire career on playing it safe, avoiding failures by avoiding opportunities. He had risen through the ranks by never betting on anything that couldn't be guaranteed, never championing innovations that might fail, never taking the calculated risks that separate industry leaders from followers. His management philosophy was simple: better to maintain steady, predictable mediocrity than risk spectacular failure. What he didn't understand was that in the technology industry, refusing to innovate is itself the greatest risk of all. The idea for Vertex came to me during a particularly frustrating client meeting in late March. DataCorp International, one of our biggest accounts, was explaining how they were spending over $2 million annually managing data across 17 different enterprise systems that couldn't communicate effectively with each other. "We need something that can harmonize all our data streams in real time," their CTO explained. "Something that doesn't just integrate systems, but actually learns from the data patterns and optimizes processes automatically. We're hemorrhaging money because our systems are fighting each other instead of working together." Our account manager gave the standard Global Tech response: "We can definitely help you optimize your current integrations. We have several proven solutions that can improve efficiency by 15–20%. But I was thinking bigger. What if instead of just connecting existing systems, we created an entirely new architecture that could dynamically harmonize data from any source, learn from usage patterns, and continuously optimize itself? What if we built something that didn't just solve today's integration problems, but anticipated tomorrow's needs?" That night, I went home to my Lincoln Park apartment and opened my laptop. Instead of relaxing after another day of corporate mediocrity, I began sketching out the architecture for what would become the most sophisticated enterprise data management platform ever created. The core innovation was what I called dynamic data harmonization, an AI-driven algorithm that could analyze data from any enterprise system, identify patterns and redundancies, and create seamless integration pathways that actually improved over time. Unlike traditional integration tools that simply moved data between systems, Vertex would understand the data, learn from it, and optimize entire business processes. But Vertex was more than just smart integration. I envisioned a complete platform that could serve as the neural system for any large organization, connecting everything from inventory management to customer service, from financial reporting to supply chain optimization. It would be the kind of transformative technology that appears maybe once in a decade. I spent the next 8 months of my life, evenings, weekends, vacation days, building Vertex from the ground up. I invested $47,000 of my own savings in development tools, cloud computing resources, and specialized hardware. I learned programming languages I'd never used before, studied machine learning algorithms until 3 a.m., and built prototypes that I tested and rebuilt dozens of times. The work was exhausting, but it was also the most intellectually satisfying project of my career. I wasn't just solving technical problems, I was creating something that could revolutionize how businesses operate. Every breakthrough felt like discovering a new continent. By November 2019, I had a working prototype that could demonstrate capabilities no existing system could match. I had beta tested it with 3 small companies who saw immediate improvements in operational efficiency. The financial projections were staggering. Conservative estimates suggested Vertex could generate $250 million in revenue within 2 years of commercial launch. More importantly, I had created something with genuine competitive moat. The algorithms were complex enough that competitors would need years to reverse engineer similar functionality. And the network effects meant that each new implementation made the entire system more valuable. I was ready to present Vertex to global tech systems, confident that they would recognize the opportunity and fast-track it to development. I had no idea I was about to walk into the most career-defining rejection of my life. December 3, 2019. I remember the date because it marked the end of my naive belief that good ideas automatically find recognition in corporate environments. I had scheduled a meeting with Robert Kane to present what I genuinely believed was the most important innovation global tech had ever had the opportunity to develop. I had prepared for weeks, anticipating every question he might ask, every concern he might raise, every objection he might have. My presentation included 47 slides of technical documentation, live prototype demonstrations, detailed market analysis showing a $2.3 billion addressable market, and financial projections that conservative estimates suggested could make Vertex our company's flagship product within 18 months. I should have taken Robert's scheduling of our meeting for 8 a.m. on a Monday as a warning sign. I should have been concerned that he had allocated only 30 minutes for what I had described as a transformative technology proposal. But I was so excited to share my work that I ignored the obvious signals that he wasn't taking the meeting seriously. Robert's corner office was a shrine to risk aversion. Conservative furniture, predictable artwork, industry awards that celebrated incremental achievements rather than breakthrough innovations. His desk was positioned to create maximum psychological distance between him and visitors. A power play I would only recognize in retrospect. I have a project proposal that could transform our market position, I began, opening my laptop to show the demonstration. What's it about? He asked, not looking up from his computer screen. He was clearly more interested in his emails than my presentation. I launched into my explanation of Vertex, describing how it could unify enterprise systems that traditionally required multiple platforms, how it addressed current market inefficiencies, and how it could become a decisive competitive advantage. While I spoke, I watched his eyes remain fixed on his monitor. He was reading emails, occasionally nodding automatically, completely absent from the most important conversation of my career. His body language told me everything I needed to know, but I persevered. I showed him the technical demonstrations, the client feedback from beta testing, the financial projections. I explained how Vertex could generate more revenue than our 3 largest existing products combined, how it would create barriers to entry that could secure our market leadership for years. After 10 minutes of presentation, 10 minutes during which he asked not a single question, he finally interrupted me. Jessica, is this another systems integration project? Because we already have enough products in that space. He hadn't been listening. He had been physically present but completely absent from my presentation. No, Mr. Kane, I responded, trying to stay calm. This isn't just another integration system. It's a completely new architecture that could redefine how companies manage their enterprise data. I tried to show him the technical demonstrations, the financial numbers, the market research that backed every aspect of the project. Finally, he looked up from his computer and made eye contact for the first time since I had entered his office. Jessica, I appreciate your enthusiasm, he said, with a tone that made clear he didn't appreciate anything. But we need to focus on projects that generate immediate results. Our clients want proven solutions, not risky experiments. The dismissal in his voice was devastating. Here was a man who had spent our meeting checking email while I presented a solution to problems that were costing our industry billions of dollars annually. He hadn't asked a single technical question, hadn't reviewed any of the financial data, hadn't shown even basic curiosity about what I had spent 8 months creating. But the projections show this project could generate $250 million in revenue in the first 2 years. I insisted, pointing toward my laptop. The market research indicates enormous unmet demand for this type of solution. Robert sighed, as if he were explaining something obvious to a child. Listen, all engineers think their project is going to revolutionize the industry. But the reality is that 90% of these innovations end up being resource black holes that never generate return on investment. My job is to protect this company from that kind of unnecessary risk. The irony was staggering. Here was a CEO talking about protecting the company from risk, while systematically avoiding the calculated risks that could secure our competitive future. He was so afraid of failure that he couldn't recognize success when it was documented, demonstrated, and projected right in front of him. Could you at least review the technical documentation or the financial projections? I asked, pointing toward the comprehensive folder I had brought. It's not necessary, he responded, pushing the folder toward my side of the desk without opening it. I know this type of project. They sound impressive on paper, but in reality, they're implementation nightmares that cost more than they could ever generate. He leaned back in his chair, clearly considering the meeting over. My advice is to focus on more realistic projects. We have enough work with existing products. What happened next was the moment that changed everything. Robert closed my folder without having opened it, pushed it to the edge of his desk, and spoke the words that would become the seed of his own destruction. This has no commercial value, Jessica. It's a waste of time and resources. Then he looked at his watch and added, I have another meeting. I hope we can find more productive ways to use your time in the future. The casualness of his dismissal was what hurt most. I had poured 8 months of my life, $47,000 of my own money, and every ounce of my professional expertise into creating something that could revolutionize our industry. And he had rejected it based on a 10-minute distracted review and a philosophy that preferred predictable mediocrity over breakthrough innovation. I sat there for a moment, watching him casually discard 8 months of my life without bothering to understand what I had created. The folder was there, unopened, containing research that could have transformed our company's trajectory. And he had rejected it based on nothing, on assumptions, on fear of risk, on a business philosophy that preferred guaranteed mediocrity over potential excellence. I left his office with my laptop, my unopened folder, and a determination I had never felt before. If Robert Kane couldn't see the value of what I had created, I would find someone who could. That night, sitting in my apartment with the rejection still stinging, I made a decision that would change my life. I was going to prove Robert Kane wrong. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I was looking for validation. I needed to know if I had really created something valuable, or if Robert was right about my risky experiment. I began researching companies that might be interested in disruptive technology for enterprise data management. Companies that weren't afraid of innovation, that understood real growth came from creating solutions competitors couldn't replicate. After a week of analysis, I identified 3 firms that fit my criteria perfectly. Innovate Tech Solutions, a Boston-based technology consulting company specializing in digital transformations for Fortune 500 companies. Their CEO, Chen, had built her reputation on identifying emerging technologies before they became industry standards. Under her leadership, Innovate Tech had grown from a 50-person startup to a 2,000-employee powerhouse commanding premium rates because their solutions delivered results traditional consultants couldn't match. Data Stream Dynamics, a Seattle startup that had raised $150 million in Series C funding specifically to acquire breakthrough technologies that could scale into billion-dollar platforms. Their founder, David Kim, was a former Microsoft architect who had left the corporate world to build solutions for problems the industry was ignoring. Quantum Enterprise Systems, a San Francisco firm established by former Oracle and Salesforce executives who invested aggressively in technologies that could redefine entire markets. Their investment thesis was simple: find technologies that solve expensive problems better than existing solutions, then scale them globally. I decided to start with Innovate Tech Solutions because their client base most closely matched the market I had identified for Vertex. I spent 3 days crafting the perfect outreach email to Chen. I didn't mention that I worked for Global Tech Systems or that the project had been rejected. I simply presented Vertex as a breakthrough innovation seeking strategic partnership, positioning myself as an independent innovator with a solution to problems their clients were experiencing. The email included a brief technical description, preliminary financial projections, and enough detail to demonstrate the solution's potential without revealing proprietary algorithms. I also included links to a private demo site where they could see Vertex in action, along with anonymized case studies from my beta testing. The response came 48 hours later and changed everything. Jessica, what you describe sounds exactly like the solution our clients have been requesting for years. If your numbers are accurate, this could represent a market opportunity worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I've reviewed your demo site, and I'm impressed by both the technical sophistication and the practical applications. Can we schedule a video call this week? Marina. The video call with Marina Chen was unlike any professional conversation I had ever experienced. For 2 hours, I presented Vertex to someone who not only understood what I had created, but grasped why it mattered. Marina asked detailed technical questions that demonstrated she understood not just what Vertex did, but why it was revolutionary. She requested specific demonstrations of features I hadn't even highlighted in my initial presentation. She discussed market implications with a sophistication that showed she really comprehended what I had built. The dynamic data harmonization algorithm alone could be worth tens of millions, she said, reviewing my technical documentation in real time. But the integrated approach, the user experience design, the scalability architecture, this isn't just innovation. It's disruption at the level we see maybe once every 5 years. Dr. Sarah Williams, InnovateTech's CTO, joined the call and immediately began asking questions that pushed my understanding of my own creation. She identified optimization opportunities and enhancement possibilities that could make Vertex even more powerful. Have you considered how this could apply to real-time financial trading data? She asked. Or supply chain optimization for manufacturing? The applications go far beyond traditional enterprise integration. At the end of the call, Marina's verdict was unequivocal. This isn't just innovation, Jessica. It's pure disruption. I want you to fly to our Boston offices next week for a complete presentation to our executive team. We're prepared to move quickly on this. The flight to Boston felt surreal. 6 months earlier, I had been begging Robert Kane to spend 10 minutes understanding what I had created. Now I was flying across the country to present to executives who had already recognized Vertex's value based on a single video call. The presentation at InnovateTech's headquarters was everything my meeting with Robert should have been. Their executive team didn't just understand the technical value of Vertex, they identified market applications I hadn't even considered. They discussed implementation strategies, partnership opportunities, and scaling potential with strategic thinking I had never encountered at Global Tech Systems. Michael Rodriguez, their CFO, analyzed my financial projections with thoroughness that made Robert's dismissal seem even more absurd in retrospect. The revenue potential here is extraordinary, he said, reviewing my financial models. But more importantly, the competitive advantage this creates is sustainable. Once a company implements Vertex, switching costs become prohibitive. This isn't just a product, it's a platform that could dominate the market for decades. At the end of the presentation, Marina made me an offer that left me speechless. We want to purchase complete rights to Vertex for $2. $5 million, plus 15% royalties on all revenue generated by system implementations. Additionally, we want to offer you a position as our Director of Innovation with a $250,000 annual salary, plus equity in InnovateTech. You'll have your own R&D team, unlimited development resources, and the opportunity to lead Vertex's evolution into the industry standard. $2.5 million, plus royalties, plus a dream job with unlimited resources. For a project that Robert had dismissed as a waste of time without even reviewing the documentation, the offer came with one complication. I needed to ensure I had complete rights to the project. Since I had developed Vertex using my personal time and resources, technically it was my intellectual property. But I had occasionally worked on it during office hours, which could create legal complications if global tech decided to claim ownership. I decided to be completely transparent with Marina about my situation. I developed this project primarily on my personal time, but I currently work for global tech systems. I need to handle my departure in a way that doesn't create legal complications for either party. Marina smiled. Perfect. That gives us the opportunity to do this right. Our legal team specializes in intellectual property transfers. We'll handle everything to protect both you and us, and we'll provide full legal support to ensure a clean transition from your current employer. Before accepting the offer, I decided to give Robert one final chance. I wasn't being generous, I was being thorough. I needed to know I had exhausted every possibility before walking away from a company where I had invested 2 years of my career. I requested one last meeting to discuss Vertex, hoping that perhaps with more time and a different approach, Robert might see beyond his fear of risk. The meeting was scheduled for December 17, 2019. A date I'll never forget because it was the day I watched a CEO choose failure over success in real time. I arrived with the same presentation, the same documentation, and honestly, the same hope that this time he might recognize what he was about to lose forever. For 15 minutes, I presented Vertex with all the passion and technical knowledge I had accumulated, plus the additional insights I had gained from my conversations with innovator. I explained how their competitors were already asking for similar solutions, how the market was moving toward exactly this type of innovation, how global tech could lead the industry instead of following it. Robert listened with the same bored expression he had shown in our first meeting. He asked no questions, made no comments, showed no curiosity about the technical innovations or market opportunities I was describing. At the end of my presentation, his response was identical to our first meeting. Jessica, I appreciate your persistence, but my position hasn't changed. This type of experimental project doesn't fit with our business strategy. We need to focus on proven solutions that generate predictable results. It was at that moment I knew I had made the right decision. I took out my resignation letter and placed it on his desk. I understand your position perfectly, I said. That's why I've decided to seek opportunities where my work can be appropriately valued. Robert opened the letter and read quickly. His expression shifted from boredom to surprise, then to something that might have been concern. Are you resigning over this project? He asked, pointing toward my laptop. Jessica, don't make hasty decisions. We can find ways to incorporate some of your ideas into future projects. The sudden shift in his tone was telling. Now that I was leaving, he was finally showing interest in retaining me. But it was too late for half measures and vague promises. It's not hasty, I responded, closing my laptop. I've found an opportunity that values exactly the kind of innovation you consider a waste of time. I stood up and headed toward the door. My last day will be January 3rd. I'll complete all my current projects and ensure adequate transition of my responsibilities. Jessica, wait, Robert said, standing up from behind his desk. Let's talk about this. Maybe we were too hasty in our evaluation. Could you leave the documentation with me for a more thorough review? The irony was perfect. He was asking for a thorough review of documentation he had refused to open during our first meeting. The documentation stays with me, I replied, reaching for the unopened folder on his desk. It represents 8 months of work that this company has determined has no value. I'm sure you understand why I wouldn't want to leave something worthless behind. I left his office for the last time, knowing that in 3 weeks I would be working for people who understood that real innovation requires taking calculated risks. What I didn't know was that Robert was about to discover exactly how much his risk aversion had cost him. January 6, 2020. My first day at Innovate Tech Solutions as Director of Innovation was everything I had dreamed my career could be. Marina welcomed me with a team of 12 senior engineers who had been assembled specifically to commercialize Vertex. They hadn't just bought my project, they had built an entire division around it, with the budget and resources to turn it into the platform I had envisioned. The first 6 months at Innovate Tech were the most exciting of my professional career. I worked with teams that understood every technical aspect of what I had created and could improve and expand my ideas in ways I had never considered. Vertex evolved from an innovative prototype to a robust commercial platform capable of handling the most complex operations of any multinational corporation. But the real validation came when we began implementing Vertex with our first clients. The results exceeded even my most optimistic projections. Global Manufacturing Corp reduced operational costs by 68% in the first quarter after implementation. Retail giant International increased inventory management efficiency by 240%, while reducing waste by 45%. Finance leader Bank cut transaction processing time by 85%, while improving accuracy by 99.7%. The numbers didn't lie. Vertex was transforming how companies managed their global operations. While Innovate Tech celebrated Vertex's success, global tech systems began experiencing problems they hadn't anticipated. Several of their most important clients started asking for more advanced data management solutions, specifically mentioning capabilities that sounded suspiciously similar to what I had developed. The industry was evolving toward exactly the kind of innovation Robert had rejected. September 15, 2020. 9 months after Vertex's commercial launch, Innovate Tech published a press release that would change everything. The release announced Vertex as the most advanced enterprise data management platform ever created, and projected first-year revenues exceeding $180 million. My name appeared prominently as the principal architect and innovation director responsible for the platform's development. Within 24 hours, the press release had been picked up by every major technology publication. Forbes called it the most significant enterprise software innovation in a decade. TechCrunch described it as the solution that redefines what's possible in data management. Wall Street Journal ran a feature story titled, "The Platform That's Revolutionizing How Fortune 500 Companies Operate." 3 days after the press release, I received a call I never expected. It was Robert Kane. "Jessica," he said, his voice completely different from what I remembered. "Could we talk? There are some developments that we need to discuss." "Of course," I responded, curious about what had motivated this call. "What's it about?" "Your project," he said after a long pause. "The one you presented before leaving. I'm seeing some striking similarities with this Vertex platform that's generating significant industry attention." I felt a smile spreading across my face. "Vertex is exactly the project I presented to you 10 months ago. The one you described as a waste of time and resources without even reviewing the documentation." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Finally, Robert spoke with a voice that seemed to have aged years in seconds. "Did you sell that project to Innovate Tech?" "Innovate Tech recognized the value of what I had created," I responded. "They paid $2.5 million for the rights, plus 15% royalties on all future implementations. They also hired me as Director of Innovation to lead the platform's development and expansion." Another long pause. "Jessica, we need to talk in person. Would it be possible to meet this week? There are some opportunities I'd like to discuss with you." "What kind of opportunities?" I asked, though I already knew where the conversation was heading. "Opportunities for you to return to global tech systems. We've reevaluated our innovation strategy and believe there are ways to incorporate your vision into our company. We're prepared to make a very competitive offer." The irony was exquisite. 10 months after rejecting my project without consideration, Robert was begging me to return to implement exactly the same innovation he had dismissed. But now that Innovate Tech had validated Vertex's commercial value, it had suddenly become a strategic priority. "I appreciate the offer," I responded, "but I'm very satisfied with my current position. Innovate Tech valued my work from day one, not after seeing competitors validate it." "Jessica, I know I made a mistake," Robert said with an honesty he had never shown before. "But we can rectify the situation. We're prepared to offer significant compensation for the previous misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding to rectify," I responded. "You made a decision based on your business philosophy. I made a decision based on mine. The results speak for themselves." The conversation with Robert was just the beginning. Over the following months, I watched as the full consequences of his decision unfolded in spectacular fashion. For global tech systems, by December 2020, they had lost 7 major clients to companies using Vertex-based solutions. Their stock price dropped 34%, as investors realized they had missed the industry's most significant innovation. Revenue growth stagnated at 2%, while Innovate Tech grew 340% in the same period. Employee morale plummeted as top talent left for companies offering cutting-edge projects. For Robert personally, in March 2021, Global Tech's board voted to replace him with a new CEO who promised to embrace disruptive innovation. His reputation in the industry was permanently damaged when the full story became public. He struggled to find another executive position, as other companies viewed him as the leader who missed the biggest opportunity in enterprise software. For me, by the end of 2020, my 15% royalties from Vertex implementations had generated over $18 million in personal income. Innovate Tech's equity package had made me a multimillionaire as the company's valuation soared. I was named to Forbes' 30 Under 30 list and invited to speak at major technology conferences. Most importantly, I had proven that innovation will always find its way, even when corporate leaders are too blind to recognize it. 2 years after Vertex's launch, the platform had been implemented by over 400 multinational corporations across 67 countries. The operational efficiencies generated by these implementations had saved businesses an estimated $4.7 billion in combined costs. But Vertex's impact went beyond financial metrics. It had fundamentally changed how the industry thought about enterprise data management. Competitors were forced to completely redesign their platforms to match capabilities they hadn't even imagined were possible. Market leadership. Innovate Tech became the fastest-growing enterprise software company in history. Vertex captured 47% market share in advanced data management within 24 months. The platform's success attracted acquisition offers exceeding $2 billion. Chen was named CEO of the Year by multiple technology publications. Competitive response. Microsoft spent $500 million trying to develop a Vertex competitor, failing to match its capabilities. Oracle acquired 3 startups, attempting to build similar platforms, none achieving commercial success. Salesforce completely redesigned their data architecture to integrate Vertex-like functionality. IBM's enterprise division saw revenue decline 23% as clients migrated to Vertex-based solutions. The technology that Robert Kane had dismissed as having no commercial value had not only created a new market category, but had become the industry standard within 2 years of its launch. In November 2022, exactly 3 years after Robert's initial rejection of Vertex, Harvard Business Review published a case study titled "The Innovation That Almost Never Existed," a study in corporate risk aversion. The article became one of their most read pieces ever, generating discussions in MBA programs worldwide about the dangers of risk-averse leadership in technology companies. The case study included interviews with me, Chen, several Vertex clients, and surprisingly, Robert Kane himself. In his interview, Robert admitted that rejecting Vertex had been the most catastrophic strategic error of my career, and that he had learned that extreme risk aversion can be more dangerous than risk itself. He also revealed something I hadn't known. After my resignation, Global Tech had actually attempted to develop their own version of Vertex. They had spent $12 million and 18 months trying to recreate what I had built, ultimately abandoning the project when they realized they couldn't replicate the core innovations. We had dismissed the solution, then spent more than 4 times what Innovate Tech paid to acquire it, and still couldn't create anything comparable, Robert admitted. It was the ultimate validation that Jessica had created something truly revolutionary. Today, 5 years after that dismissive 5-minute meeting in Robert's office, I lead the innovation division of one of the world's most successful technology companies. Vertex has been implemented by over 800 multinational corporations, generating operational efficiencies that have saved the global economy an estimated $23 billion. But the most satisfying aspect of this story isn't the financial success. It's the validation of a simple principle. True innovation will always find its way to market, regardless of how many risk-averse leaders try to suppress it. The lessons I learned. 1. Corporate rejection often says more about the company than the innovation. Robert's dismissal wasn't based on Vertex's merits. It was based on his fear of anything unproven. 2. Risk aversion can be riskier than risk-taking. By avoiding the risk of innovation, global tech guaranteed their decline in a rapidly evolving market. 3. Innovation requires courage from leadership. The difference between Innovate Tech and Global Tech wasn't technical capability, it was Marina's willingness to bet on breakthrough ideas. 4. Market validation beats corporate politics. No amount of internal resistance can stop an innovation whose time has come. 5. The best revenge is massive success. I never set out to destroy global tech systems. I simply found people who recognized the value Robert couldn't see. The current state. Innovate Tech has grown to over 15,000 employees and is preparing for an IPO valued at $8 billion. Global Tech Systems was acquired by a larger competitor in 2023 for less than their 2019 valuation. Robert Kane now works as a consultant, ironically advising companies on innovation management. I continue leading breakthrough projects with the resources and support to turn visionary ideas into reality. The most important lesson is this: if you've ever had an innovative idea dismissed by leaders who preferred safety over progress, don't let their limitations define your potential. Find the people who recognize value when they see it, who understand that real growth comes from solving problems others are afraid to tackle. Innovation doesn't need permission. It just needs the right environment to flourish. If this story resonates with you, or if you've experienced similar corporate rejection of your innovations, I'd love to hear your story. Sometimes the best therapy for professional dismissal is knowing others have lived through similar situations and found ways to validate their vision elsewhere. And if you're a leader reading this, remember, the next time someone presents you with an impossible idea, take the time to really understand what they've created. The innovation you dismiss today might be the competitive advantage your company desperately needs tomorrow.